Welcome to Stagecoach Podcast, where you will find the best Western books on the market. This podcast is brought to you from Dusty Saddle Publishing, also referred to as DSP, the home of Western excellence, where around the world people still enjoy the Old West, and DSP works hard to provide great Western novels for readers to enjoy. First, let's dive into the plot. Finn Sullivan continues his adventures in the beautiful but unforgiving American West in this continuation of his exploits, featured in Finn Sullivan, Mountain Man Wolverine. Finn and his loyal Ute partner, Little Dove, find themselves on the dark, dangerous trail of a sadistic, cold-blooded Assiniboine Indian appropriately named Rattlesnake. Along this mission, they meet new folks from far-off lands and find themselves in more than a little bit of trouble. Will they catch up to the murderous, poisonous Rattlesnake, or will they succumb to the punishing West before exacting justice? In this episode, we'll be reading Finn Sullivan, Mountain Man, Rattlesnake, Book 2 by author Scotty V. Casper. This is Part 3. Without further ado, join us as we read.
Chapter 7, River Crossing. After killing Jamal and Deshaun, Finn and his companions caught up with the two remaining horses and Oliver's beaver furs. Wow, I'm glad to get those furs back. I thought I was going to have to go to the rendezvous without anything to sell, Oliver said. We're happy for you, Finn said. Do you have anything to sell at the rendezvous? Oliver asked. Not really. We don't have furs, but we do have 4 extra horses that somebody might want to buy. Oliver had been smoking his pipe, and he tamped out the dottle. I've been meaning to ask, where did you get all of those extra horses? I've found it necessary to kill a few Indians since I've been here in the West. Haven't you ever heard to the victor goes the spoils? Yep. If we haven't caught up with Rattlesnake before the rendezvous, do you want me to sell those horses for you? Yes, please. And you can combine that money with what you get when you sell your furs. Then you can buy supplies to get us all through the winter. Yes, that sounds like a good plan. So, you are taking me on as a full-time partner? Finn chuckled. Of course, that's what it means. Little Dove and I think you are a good man. Besides, you saved our lives when you fished us out of the Yellowstone River. We owe you. But don't lose sight of one fact. I might be young, but I'm the boss of this outfit. Yep, I did save you. That's what friends do, and I recognize you as boss. You would have done the same if I was floating down the Yellowstone. A westering sun had drawn down the temperature, and the landscape was darkening. Let's set up camp, and tomorrow we can get up early and get on Rattlesnake's trail, Finn said. Yes, I agree, Oliver said. Suddenly, Deshaun and Jamal's 3 donkeys started braying, and the foal had a fit. He raced around and kicked back with his heels and bucked. What in tarnation has gotten into those donkeys? Finn asked. I think they want water. Let's take all the stock down to the river, Oliver said. While the horses and donkeys drank, Finn and Oliver talked. What are we going to do with these dang donkeys? He asked. I'll take them to the rendezvous and sell them. We can split the profits. How does that sound? That could work. I'm thankful Little Dove and I still have Buck and Sugar, our riding horses, Finn said. You named your horses? Yep. What do you call that steel dust you ride? You seem to think highly of him. You don't want to hear what I call him sometimes when he acts up. No, I haven't given him a name. What about the pots and pans? What should we do with them? Oliver asked. We'd be stupid to carry them along with us because of the racket they make. At that moment, Little Dove walked up and heard what they said about the pans. She had Azure and the cradle board on her back, and she had a pot she was going to fill in order to make supper and boil coffee. Let me look those pots over. Maybe I could use a couple items and we should just bury the rest. All right, Finn said. Back at the camp, Little Dove looked over the pots and pans, and she chose one cooking vessel made out of stainless steel, a recently developed alloy in America, and she chose another huge pot made of copper. Then she discovered a Dutch oven and decided she should keep it as well to make biscuits and other items. All the rest of the cookware got dumped into a hole they dug and covered over. They thought it would be irresponsible to litter the Rocky Mountains, even if the litter would be inconsequential due to the immense size of the Rockies. But what if everybody littered? After they set up camp, Little Dove took Azure off in the shadows and put her to her breast. As soon as I feed this precious little baby, I will cook our supper. She gets to eat first. Priorities, Oliver said. While Finn and Oliver waited for their supper, they struck up a conversation. They were getting to be comfortable around each other. Oliver loaded his pipe, lit it, and took in the aromatic smoke. You've never told me where you are from originally. You never asked. I'm originally from Ireland. I knew it. I thought I recognized a little of the Irish lilt in your speech. My father owned and operated a cotton cloth manufacturing business. He was killed and I inherited the business. It was too much for me, so I turned over a 49% share in the business to a trusted attorney named Lorcan. My uncle Ronan was an unprincipled loot, and he tried mightily to take over the business. I think he killed my father, and I know for sure he arranged to have me shanghaied so he could take over the business. I spent over a year on a ship named the Tam O'Shanter, and it was a brutal existence. Cash, a friend I met shipboard, and I escaped in San Francisco, and we made our way to a cave in northern Montana. Cash was a former mountain man, and he taught me most of everything I know about surviving in these here mountains. Cash was killed last fall by a murderous Indian named Wolverine. You must be rich then. I suppose I am, but I don't have any money in my possession now, except about $100. A fellow named Connor that lived in that magical valley, where Little Dove and I spent the winter, is in Ireland now. He was from Drogheda, Ireland. He is trying to access my bank account there and bring me $10,000. As my partner, does it make a difference to you? Not in the least. If I get that money, I intend on having a beautiful log home built for Little Dove and I. I suspect there will be several mountain men not cutting it as trappers, and they'll want to help build our home for respectable wages. If that happens, I'll have a living quarters built for you off on the side, that is, of course, unless you do something to lose my trust. I promise I won't do anything to harm you. That's good, because a fellow named Bud, a Swede, tried to rape Little Dove when I was off making meat, and I half killed him for his treachery. Don't worry, I'm not like Bud. Now, do you want to hear about my former life? I think it is only fitting that you should know about it in order to understand me better. Of course, shoot. I was born in 1801 in St. Louis, so that makes you 31 years old. Hey, you're younger than I thought. Yeah, a little gray has crept into my beard prematurely. My mother was from the Azores, and father was born in Spain. They migrated to America, entered at Ellis Island, and met later in New Orleans and married. Father made a living growing rice. Many of those highly spiced Creole dishes use lots of rice, so father made a pretty good living growing rice. We had 5 acres of land near Lake Pontchartrain. Father taught me the value of hard work, and mother taught me humility and morals. She told me to treat all people fairly no matter their race or creed. She strongly believed in the golden rule. Scarlet fever carried both Mom and Pop off when I was only 16, so I took a ferry boat up to St. Louis to try and find work. I had a little money with me when I boarded the ferry, and 2 riverboat thugs stole the money and threw me in the river. I nearly drowned, but I managed to swim to shore. After a long period of time, I finally made it to St. Louis. Along the way, I begged for food and rides in the back of the wagons. It was a humbling experience. After scrounging around for a living along the riverfront in St. Louis for nearly a year, I signed on with the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, and we took a 55 keelboat up the Missouri River and into the beaver trapping country in the West. I cut my eye teeth trapping for the Rocky Mountain Fur Company for 10 years. I got to know Kit Carson during those great years. It was back then when I met Zeb and we decided to branch off on our own and try our hand as free trappers. We made a pretty good living at it until old Zeb got killed. The rest you know, and I'm looking forward to starting a new chapter in my life, partnering up with you folks. We're glad to have you. I'm counting on you teaching me the ins and outs of trapping beaver, Finn said. Little Dove said, we feel safer with you around. Having an extra gun oftentimes can mean the difference between life and death. The following day, they took out after Rattlesnake and his cutthroat companions. Their trail wasn't hard to follow because 6 Indian ponies and 5 of the oxen they acquired after killing everyone in the Jenkins wagon train party headed to Oregon. Everyone but Azure, that is. Look here, what's going on? Oliver asked. One of the Indians and the 5 oxen are swinging back to the northeast and separating from the war party. Rattlesnake must have ordered one of the warriors to take the oxen back to the Assiniboine village because the lumbering beasts were slowing them down. A war party can't have that when they are out to rape, kill, and pillage. They have to be able to move fast in order to carry out their treacheries. I agree. Let's keep after Rattlesnake. Look at it this way. We have one less warrior to deal with, Finn said. Black and ominous anvil-shaped clouds had gathered off to the northwest. Thunder rumbled across the sky, sounding like a man with heavy boots running down a long hallway. We need to find shelter, and in a hurry, because the least of our worries is getting wet, and the worst is getting hit by lightning, Finn said. They were out on a barren plain and vulnerable, so they hustled toward the bank of the Yellowstone River that was lined with brush, lodgepole pine, Douglas fir, and Engelmann spruce. They found 2 Engelmann spruce that were clumped together, so they crowded in below the trees to ride out the storm. It started to rain and then came the hail. Their shelter was less than perfect, but it served to keep them relatively dry. Luckily, a short time later, the rain and hail let up, so they rode back out into the sunshine to warm up and dry off. It didn't take long, and they found Rattlesnake's trail. The rain had washed it out some, but they were still able to follow it. Before long, they came to the spot where Rattlesnake had crossed the Yellowstone River. They couldn't cross the river there because it had risen since then and the current was too swift and turbulent. Snow melt in the nearby mountains, and several days of rain had choked the river with too much water. They rode west for 2 miles and finally found a spot where they could cross, but they had a 6-foot bank to deal with to get down to the river. They spent 2 hours with shovels and cut the bank down. Once that was done, Oliver crossed the river to check it out. It was still fairly high at that spot. He rode back before long and shouted, "Come on in! It's not too bad here and the bottom is solid." But Finn, you should take your rope and throw it around that donkey foal's neck and drag him across the river. Otherwise, the little fellow will get swept away. Oh, and we are probably going to have to cut down the bank on the far side to get up onto the prairie. Finn pushed their extra horses and the donkeys into the river, and the animals seemed to be doing all right. Then Oliver started back across the river, holding Azure in the cradleboard in front of him, and he was followed by Finn, who was dragging the donkey foal along on a rope, and then there was Little Dove. Suddenly, Sugar lost his footing and stumbled, dumping Little Dove into the river. It was not to be believed. Little Dove had already been in the river the day before, farther upstream. The Yellowstone snakes along, making it necessary to cross it several times to get to one's destination. Finn handed Oliver the rope, pulling the donkey foal along, and he raced back out of the river and rode at breakneck speed to get ahead of Little Dove. He rode Buck on the dead run, and they jumped off the bank and dived into the river. Both horse and man went completely underwater, and Finn got dislodged from the saddle, and he was afloat in the river. He swam frantically towards Buck, caught him by the tail, and managed to grab hold of a stirrup and hoist himself back into the saddle. Little Dove was out in the middle of the river, struggling to keep her head above water. She was a poor swimmer. Finn urged Buck to scramble toward the center of the river by walking on the bottom sometimes and swimming at others. He knew that if he didn't intersect Little Dove in the middle of the river, that she would be swept on by and lost. By exerting a huge effort, Buck managed to get him there on time, and he caught Little Dove by the hair and stopped her from careening down the river. Finn used every bit of his strength and managed to lift her into the saddle in front of him. From there, they made it safely to the far shore, and Finn managed to scramble up the bank without having to cut it down. Then he set to work gathering bark and twigs to start a fire. Little Dove was suffering badly from hypothermia, and he knew she would die if he didn't get her warmed up. Oliver came along and helped get a roaring fire going, and it took a while, but soon both Finn and Little Dove warmed up. The first words from Little Dove's mouth was, "Where's Sugar? Did he drown?" It was like Little Dove to think of the welfare of her horse and not bother dwelling on the fact she had almost died. "I'll go find out what happened to him," Oliver said, and he rode downriver looking for Little Dove's beloved horse. Before long, Oliver returned leading Sugar. Little Dove raced over and hugged Sugar by the neck. "I don't know how, but he somehow managed to get out of the river," Oliver said. "When I found him, he was grazing, stuffing his mouth with lush green meadow grass as if nothing happened. We'll spend the rest of the day drying everything and warming by the fire. Then tomorrow we'll get after Rattlesnake, and I hope to hell we don't have to cross that damn Yellowstone again."
This concludes Part 3 of Finn Sullivan Mountain Man, Rattlesnake, Book 2 by author Scotty V. Casper, published by Dusty Saddle Publishing. Thank you for joining us on our read, and stay tuned for Part 4. Pick up more from Scotty V. Casper on Amazon, available on Kindle and paperback. Visit our website at dspublishingnetwork.com. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you have enjoyed listening to this story. Until next time.